for me, it's finding that sweet spot of cost versus experience, right? So I love to find that sweet spot of what a guest should be paying in the right way without ripping them off. We never want to do that, right? You know, you want guests to come back. You want them to be able to experience multiple things. But also you have to run margins and you have to run numbers. And so for me, it's always been about how do I hit that sweet spot of like charging the right price where the guest gets this experience that's perfect for them, but also covers my cost, pays equitable wages to my staff, kind of takes care of everybody. For me, I look at everything as a partnership in general. Like when you're coming into my establishments, it's a partnership. You're trusting me to give you a good experience. I'm trusting you to be a good patron. And we're all working together to make this guest experience that everyone wants.
This episode made possible by Restaurant Systems Pro. With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest partner and director of operations at the Jones Assembly, Scott Marsh. My man, Scott, are you feeling unstoppable today?
I am feeling so unstoppable.
Yeah, brother. I can't wait to dive into your story. I want to give a special nod to Brian Bogart, who put you on my radar. I had him on the show way back in 2021. It was 4 years ago. Feels like yesterday. That was episode 775. We might be connecting with Brian this week. I'm hoping I can make that work. But he said I have to talk to you and what you're doing here and an amazing partner you are. So I can't wait to get into it. Before we dive into who you are and what you're doing here at the Jones Assembly, let's get that motivational, inspirational, ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
Yeah, this one's always stuck with me. It's the Thomas Jefferson quote. I'm a great believer in luck. And I find that the harder I work, the luckier I get. Yeah,
man. Dive into that a little bit more. Why does that resonate with you?
Yeah, for me, I grew up, in a small town. We farmed and learned from an early age of what that meant, what work meant, and how fulfilling that could be, and how if you working through things, challenges, etc., especially with animals and vegetables and fruits and so on, what those challenges can be and how you can work through those versus just kind of letting things happen or come to you. And so that's just kind of always stuck with me. It's what's gotten me to the point I'm in and has been, I owe all my success to having a work ethic that was instilled in me from an early age. Yeah. From my family.
When I hear you say that, this idea of like the harder I work, the luckier I get, I think from the outside looking in, when people achieve success, they think to themselves, oh, it must be nice. Oh, wow, they're so lucky. But what people don't see is what you do behind the scenes when nobody's looking, the years and years, decades sometimes it took to get to that point when you're an overnight success. Everybody only sees the overnight.
Yeah.
They don't see the years that goes into getting to that point, right? But 100%. The harder you work, the luckier you seem to get. Great way to get this thing started. And before we kind of dive into your backstory, I think it was 2020 that the Jones Assembly opened, right? And it was like right afterwards.
2017.
2017. Okay, yeah. No, I was way off. So I was here in 2021. Where was the social order group CEO Brian Bogart kind of shared the story? Where was the social order group in 2021 when I last left off?
Yeah, in 2021, the social order consisted of really the Jones Assembly, Fuzzy's Taco Shops, and 747 in Norman.
So Fuzzy Taco, QSRs.
Yes.
747 full service.
Full service, yeah.
And Jones Assembly, more of a full service music venue.
Yeah, so full service restaurant, bar, music. Our motto is food, spirits, music. We each one of those is a pillar of what we do. So we service a lot of people in a lot of different ways.
How many people can you fit in this facility?
So for a concert, we fit 1,672.
Damn.
And then, dining wise, we'll often do 500-600 covers,
wow.
Especially on weekends.
So you're doing volume.
Yes.
Yeah. How many square feet is this facility?
Roughly 40,000.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
And you've since, I know Brian was talking about it. He couldn't get into the details back in 2021, but there was a franchise coming out of LA that he was really excited about. What is that franchise?
Yeah, Dave's Hot Chicken. So we now have, since 2021, we now have 4.
Okay.
Dave's Hot Chickens. We've also started our own kind of fast casual concept called Spark.
Okay.
Which is like burgers, custards, fries. We started that via Scissortail Park, which is our big new park. They wanted a one of a kind concept.
When you say ours, are you saying your like?
Well,
like
ours is the city of Oklahoma City. And so they wanted a really unique and new concept. They had this building, and so we kind of built it out for that, and it's been a great success. So we've been able to open up 2 others in the market, and so that's been really fun to do that, kind of build a brand around that, build our own kind of QSR style concept.
Got it. So Fuzzy Tacos, how many locations?
Oh my gosh, I think there's 14 now.
14 Fuzzy Tacos. Was that your original, or did you guys franchise that?
Franchise.
Okay. 14, and you own 14 franchises.
Brian does.
Brian, but
yeah.
I mean, you being
social
order.
Yeah.
Right. 14 plus the Jones Assembly makes 15 plus how many 747s? 2 or 3?
So 747 has since closed, but
okay.
It was there for I think like 17 years.
Okay, so
in Norman.
So we're at 15 locations.
Yeah.
And then you opened 4 Daves. So now we're at 19, and then you have
3 Sparks
and 3 Sparks. So 22 total locations.
Sorry, so we have 10 Fuzzies.
10
18
fuzzies.
total concepts.
Got it.
Yeah.
So just to give the listeners an idea of what we're working with, and your core focus is the Jones Assembly, by far your biggest like single unit operation.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Can we get into like numbers real quick in terms of like prime cost and percent profit that this place pulls out?
Yeah. So for us, we've got a few metrics that we try to hit. As far as where we want to get to. Labor, we like to stick around that 14% for hourly labor. And we're there.
Pretty good.
Yeah, and we're there, which is awesome. We've been really consistent there. Food cost, we're really aiming between that like 27, 28 range.
Okay.
We've been able to stay there, which for the volume that we do and the level of food that we do, I think is just really incredible.
So you're still in the low 50s in your prime costs. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you guys own this building?
So yeah, we do through our partners. Are the Fred Hall family, Hall Capital, and so this is an original Model T factory.
Yeah.
So Fred Jones Manufacturing, and so it's still in the family. So this building was still in the family. This whole area was kind of that. Next door was the actual like manufacturing floor for Model Ts. This side was the parts and labor warehouse.
Got it.
And so that family has been able to keep this building and land. And so when Brian and Graham Colton, the other partners had this idea for the Jones Assembly, or for this restaurant, music venue, et cetera, this building just kind of made sense, and everybody had a really great time kind of creating and building and coming to the table in such a unique and historic.
So the Jones family is a partner in this venue.
Yes.
Okay. So you're not paying rent to them. They are
correct.
Got it. So when you take that, I would think a venue like this, if you were renting, right, would be a big chunk of your total costs.
Yes.
Right. So that's huge. So you guys are doing pretty well.
Yeah.
What is your percent profit, if you don't mind me sharing?
Yeah. So our direct operating percent profit, we aim for 20%.
That's awesome.
And you're
doing a volume.
We hit around there. Yeah. So
congratulations.
We've been very, very lucky. In the past few years, we've continued to see growth and record numbers. Which has been awesome.
What immediately comes to my mind is the difference between food and beverage. Like where you're not in like the restaurant industry, you guys are in the experience industry.
Yes.
And when you focus on that and creating experiences, you're charging at the door. I'm assuming that there's probably tickets associated with this experience.
Yeah. So for concerts, it's kind of a different model. We operate as an official venue, a normal venue. So we have tickets that we sell for each concert, and those are based on the bands that we're bringing in and how that goes. And then we offer up, outside of that, we have During our concerts, we run a special food program out of our kitchen.
Is it a limited option, I'm assuming?
Yeah, so we kind of do like what we like to consider like an elevated fare food, like really fun menu, pizzas, some burgers, hot chicken sandwich, massive corn dogs, pretzels, etc. That we get to run out of our concert side, which offers up a different, kind of food revenue for us during a concert, which most venues don't have.
Yeah,
which is really a really unique offering. And then, we have an elevated beverage program as well.
Yeah, and all those items you mentioned too, like volume, you can crank out a lot of that stuff.
Yeah,
you don't want to have an elevated fancy salad or like steak.
Yeah,
during a music venue.
Exactly.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and it also lends to like when we do like we kind of what we call own several events for us during the year. St. Patrick's Day is a big one. We have our anniversary party, which is called All Day Froze B-Day Party, which has just become huge. We shut down the street, we do a whole thing, and we're able to offer up really unique food offerings during that. So it allows us to also be really creative, with what we do. Like, we'll do a shepherd's pie fries out of that same window during St. Patrick's Day, which is just bonkers. Or we'll do, a special like Jones Toberfest, like our Oktoberfest celebration. We'll do like special lock keys and stuff like that. So we get to have fun with it too. So it allows us to kind of tap into that whimsical nostalgia. And then every other night of the week, we get to be a regular restaurant.
Okay.
So it's really interesting.
So what would you say the mix is between total revenue coming from events, venues, like concerts versus dine-in? What's that split look like?
I would say, from a percentage standpoint, like 80-20 restaurant. So from a concert perspective, that business is so different. Most venues make their money off of bar. It's not really off of tickets because the artist gets the bulk of that.
Right.
So, really that revenue it's great for us because, we get to have massive bar nights on a Wednesday or a Tuesday when you normally wouldn't, and larger food nights on those nights too.
So when you're saying 80-20, you're including the alcohol sales from those venues?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Got it. Anything else I should ask in terms of work, like to understand the Jones Assembly?
From the concert to restaurant perspective too, I would say one of the, and this is the reason this place was built in the way that it is we also get to be very picky or we get to really choose and curate what concerts we have. We're not reliant, most venues, the goal is to have a show every night. We're not reliant on that as a revenue stream. So our goal is to have the right concerts, the best concerts, as you said, to really craft the experience around those. So we get to have a lot of fun with that, as far as, we got to do the Pixies, right? So during that, we're like, yeah, let's make a special drink for that. Let's make a special food product, like to make the whole experience immersive. And that's something I think that really sets us apart as a venue.
Cool. That's really cool. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So where does it make sense to start sharing your story? Take us back.
Yeah. I mean, so, I have probably an odder path than most to the restaurant world. I think
Oklahoma City graduate?
No, so I'm from a small town, Prague, Oklahoma.
Well, you went to school in Oklahoma City.
Went to school at Oklahoma State. In Stillwater. So went to school at Oklahoma State. I was an ag major when I started, and quickly realized I didn't want to be an ag major, so I switched over to journalism and broadcasting with an emphasis in public relations. And really, I just wanted to work in music. And so I did everything I could to figure out how to do that. I wrote for the school paper. I helped host shows, throw shows. I started, along with some other folks, the first music business club at Oklahoma State, because at the time they didn't have you couldn't go into a management program for business via music or anything like that. You had to play an instrument. And so I was terrible at playing music, but I loved music and had this just deep burning desire to work in it. And I started, I managed a pita pit there. At the time, there was a chain called Pita Pit, and it was right across from where I lived. And so I started working there, started managing it. That was my first restaurant job.
Okay. At this point, did you have any inkling that you'd be in hospitality or food and beverage?
Absolutely not.
For the long term?
No, absolutely not. It was just kind of a job a means to an end. I quickly got asked to start key managing and then managing, and that led to meeting some people who were opening a bar, which meant I helped them open this bar, working at a bar.
This is all in high school?
All in college.
College.
Yeah. And, one of the first nights there was a band playing that I thought was just phenomenal. And I was like, hey guys, like, I thought you guys were great. I work for the school paper. I love promotions. I'm in public relations. You guys need help with your shows? And they're like, this was actually our first show. And I was like, oh, wow. And within 2 weeks, I was managing them. Within 6 months, we were signed to a major record deal.
Wow.
And we hit the road, and we're touring everywhere.
How long were you doing that?
I still technically work in management. I still manage one band called Night Moves from Minneapolis. So I was partners with Flaming Lips manager for 12 years. Still am with Night Moves. And so I stayed managing bands for, really heavily as my primary career for about 8 years. But that put me on the road. It put me on touring everywhere. I was very lucky that was at the forefront of kind of the cocktail revolution. So I was in New York a lot, and there were all these bars that were doing, bringing back kind of that classic cocktail world. And I couldn't find it in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
It didn't really exist. There was really one place, maybe two, that you could get an old fashioned even.
Right. So this management role you had was mustache management, and you started this in 2007.
Yes.
And you're still currently to this day.
Yeah, still currently.
That's your brand.
Yeah.
And how many total bands did you manage at one point?
At our height, I think I had 12 bands, that I was managing directly,
Wow.
along with, co-managing a few different others.
So while you're doing this, you're traveling around the country. It seems like you still have this low road like interest in cocktails and food and beverage too, because you're noticing these things.
Yeah. So I just started, kind of, you go to a market and you're there and there's not really much to do. You're on the road and you're in a hotel or you're at a venue.
Or in a camper.
Yeah, exactly. So, you kind of wander into these places. And so I started having that experience, and I quickly realized, like, as much as I loved management, the live music thing really became my focus. And so after, 3 or 4 years, I was like, hey, I'm too busy to be on the road all the time. So I moved back home to Stillwater.
Where's Stillwater relative to Oklahoma City?
It's about an hour north.
Got it.
Yeah. And so I moved back there, and I knew some guys who were buying a music venue there and who had a music venue in Oklahoma City. And I had bands play there, and they called me up because they didn't really know anyone else in Stillwater. I'm like, hey, come look at this with us. We just want your opinion. I started looking at that, and then they were like, do you want to help us with this? And
it's like 2013?
Yeah.
This is Luck Reunion?
No, this is so that's Luck Reunion's in Texas. This was the Tumbleweed Dance Hall.
Got it.
And they had a place called the Wormy Dog Saloon in Oklahoma City. And so they asked me to kind of start helping them a little bit, really like systems operations side. But
where did you learn that? Because you weren't doing any of this really with your managing talent, right?
Yeah, no, I think just naturally, being on tour, being in a venue, again, like you're just there like 16, 18 hours a day. I'm a curious person. I get bored easily. So I would be the guy hanging out with all the sound crew and being like, hey, teach me how this works.
Okay. So you got to see perspective of all these different venues and how they do it.
And how they do it, festivals and how they do it. And so that was kind of my first foray. There was a festival called Calf Fry, and I got kind of accidentally started running it. And so it was a big country music festival. I knew how the backside of it worked. I never really messed with the front side. But just numbers and systems have always made sense to me. And so I just kind of started pouring into that. That got me really focused on beverage and volume. And to me, it's always been kind of a game. It's like how good can I be at it? How good of numbers can I run? How close can I be on waste?
Yeah, get into the game.
Yeah.
Like what metrics, what KPIs, what's the score of the game?
Yeah, so for me,
specifically with what you're doing.
For me, it's finding that sweet spot of cost versus experience, right? So I love to find that sweet spot of what a guest should be paying in the right way without ripping them off. We never want to do that, right? You know, you want guests to come back. You want them to be able to experience multiple things. But also you have to run margins and you have to run numbers. And so for me, it's always been about how do I hit that sweet spot of like charging the right price where the guest gets this experience that's perfect for them, but also covers my cost, pays equitable wages to my staff, kind of takes care of everybody. For me, I look at everything as a partnership in general. Like when you're coming into my establishments, it's a partnership. You're trusting me to give you a good experience. I'm trusting you to be a good patron. And we're all working together to make this guest experience that everyone wants.
What up, unstoppable restaurant owners and operators? We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that Restaurant Unstoppable and Restaurant Systems Pro, we're taking our relationship to the next level. Beginning in July of 2024, Fred Langley, CEO of Restaurant Systems Pro, is making himself available once a week in Restaurant Unstoppable Network to answer all of your restaurant systems questions, whether it's the profit margins. He will look at your P&L. Bring your P&L. He will take a look at that. He will dissect it. He will help you find your profit, whether that be through budgeting, inventory management, costing recipe cards, labor, checklists, you name it. He is a master on restaurant systems and he's making himself available to you. Fred Langley and Restaurant Systems Pro started as a consulting firm, and for over 16 years, they've been helping their clients increase their profit by 10% or more. What are you waiting for? Click the link below to join our Facebook group, Restaurant Unstoppable Network.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the words of, Stephen R. Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Think win-win, but I think the real magic is thinking win-win-win, where you can make your patrons win, you can make the people you're working with win, like it's the band or the person who owns the venue, and then you're also winning.
Exactly.
Right? If you can find the trifecta of win-win-win, it almost like amplifies like your potential, levels of success. So what does that balance look like of what you charge versus the experience? Are there any is there a layer deeper? I mean, I'm sure it's case by case, right? So it's hard to, but can you share more about that?
Yeah, it depends on your establishment. One of the things that we do here at Jones Assembly that I think is really impactful and powerful is there are things that you're always going to win on. Like a vodka soda, you'll always win on a vodka soda because it's 2 ingredients. Neither ingredient are that expensive, and there's a base level of charge that you're going to have. So you utilize that, that's going to be a leader for you. And for me, instead of when we get a really great allocation, like a really great whiskey, a really great rare Willet or, something of that nature, instead of doing what a lot of places do, and I don't take anything away from them for doing this, but, a lot of places say, okay, this is really hard to get. And even though it's, a $60, $80 bottle of whiskey, I'm going to charge, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 an ounce for that. For us, we want people to experience it. We want people to be able to drink it. So we're not worried about making our margins on this bottle that we may never get again. We'd rather someone try that, enjoy it, experience it, and walk out of there going, yeah, that was worth it. Yeah. That was worth it. That was great. And so that's kind of the layer for us, is finding that balance between our whole mix of how we can make money on certain things that we know, we're going to sell a lot of vodka sodas. It's natural.
Yeah.
Everybody in the industry makes the joke of vodka pays the bills. There's a reason for that. So we know we're going to make our margins on things like that. So we're able to not go so over the top on other areas that do have a higher cost percentage. But so let's say,
deliver an amazing experience that will be a good enough experience to bring somebody back. So now it's about a lifetime.
Exactly.
Like patron of your experience.
Exactly. And I want people to come here, because they know that our bar staff, our wait staff, our management staff, our ownership is going to give them that experience. We're going to provide that for them. We're going to walk them through the menu. We're going to find what they want. And get that in their hand versus trying to be like, well, we want to sell this because it's got the best margin, right? So that's going to create a one-time guest. We want regulars. We want people coming here all the time. We want to be that neighborhood place that you want to eat at 3 times a week.
Got it. So right around 2013, you're starting to find a new lane for yourself.
Yes.
Where you're realizing that you've got all this perspective. You've spoken to all these people who are experts at what they do in the world of venues and experience creation and shows, and you start to realize that I can help other people with this back home. You were doing that from 2013 up until 2017. Is that how Brian and the Social Order found you?
Yeah, so I started doing, within the group I was working with, we started...
within the group, are you saying within the Social Order?
No, within the group I was working with before that kind of got me into the live side, which was called Level Land Productions.
Okay.
We got, we started opening more venues. I opened a venue called the Criterion in Oklahoma City.
So what is Level Land Productions?
So it's now defunct, but at the time was basically a venue ownership group. So we built and operated music venues in Oklahoma, festivals in Oklahoma, and then outside of Nashville, other places like that.
What was your title there?
I became the C.O.O. of that company.
Cool.
Eventually. So I started out as general manager, managed a few of their properties, moved up to C.O.O., started building stuff. And they're actually, they let me chase a wild idea. At the time, I'd gotten really, really into the number side of music venues, and especially the beverage side. As I said, that's where you're making your money at. And so they gave me a lot of trust in this, and I had this wild idea. I kind of became a self-taught craft bartender at home because, again, I couldn't find these bars here. And so I just started getting super nerdy and was reading all kinds of blogs and buying classic craft cocktail books, the Harry Craddock's, et cetera, of the world, and started kind of building out the skill set. And I had another friend in the market, and I just said, hey, I want to open a craft cocktail bar. And we were building out a venue called the Tower Theater at the time, and we started talking to them about this space that was right next to the Tower Theater with the developers, and they let me chase this crazy idea. So I opened this really progressive craft cocktail bar called Savings and Loan, and we were doing new menus every couple of weeks.
Savings and Loan?
Yeah, Savings and Loan.
New menus every couple of weeks?
Yeah, we're doing new menus every couple of weeks. We're doing really crazy technique-driven cocktail programs. Like we had...
What year was this?
This would have been 2015.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're on the early side of this craft cocktail movement happening.
So, and we were doing, forced carbonation and kegging cocktails and doing all kinds of infusions, and it was very fun. It was a blast.
And where did this take place?
It was in a venue that we had built out next to a music venue called Tower Theater, which is on 23rd Street here
in Oklahoma City.
In Oklahoma City.
Got it.
Yeah. And so we had a lot of great success. Unfortunately, the company, we had some issues with how we wanted to do business and how the company as a whole was operating. And I kind of just decided that at that point, it was best for me to kind of leave the company and become a consultant. So I consulted for them for a while. I was doing festivals kind of all over the country.
This is where it gets kind of awkward sometimes, talking about past relationships and where things get weird. But what was your desired path, and what was the path they wanted to go on? Where was the disconnect?
Yeah, my desired path was, it really came down to the Savings and Loan brand. And unfortunately, the company was doing a lot of work, and as it sometimes happens, there were some financial struggles to get from A to B. They saw the company as a whole, and I saw Savings and Loan as my baby. Yeah. And so, they wanted to take some of the funds from that and put into other things that caused issues with that particular property. And then they had done some lease agreements that I didn't agree with.
Okay. So your brand, Savings and Loan, was doing well. It was generating profit, and they were trying to take some of that profit to save the ship.
Correct.
Basically, maybe you were a part of the ship. Right?
Exactly.
So you basically, at this point, is this where you decide to split ways?
Yeah.
And what year was that?
That was 2017.
2017.
So 2017, I parted ways in March of 2017. And it was just kind of kismet. Graham Colton and I had met. We had worked on a festival project that he had kind of talked to me about a little bit. We kind of hit it off, and I was in Charleston, South Carolina, doing a festival there. I had come over to look at the Jones Assembly while it was being built, and Graham was kind of like, hey, like we might want to talk to you about helping us on the music side. Graham's one of our partners. So Graham and Brian are the co-founders, the visionaries of the Jones Assembly. Graham has a deep musical background as well, and so he and I just, we had stayed in touch more or less. And so I came toward the Jones Assembly, was in Charleston doing a festival. I was about a month out from leaving and turning into a consultant, and I could not stop thinking about this venue. And so I called Graham and just said, hey, like, is there a role here? What is this? And he's like, yeah, come. He's like, come meet with Brian and I. He's like, send over your resume. I hadn't updated my resume, and I don't know when at that point. So I rushed, updated a resume. My lovely wife
even hearing you say I had to update a resume gives me makes my skin crawl.
I know.
The thought of doing that is my goal to never have to do that again.
Exactly.
In my life.
It's just so I can safely say that I don't have an updated resume to this day.
Let's keep that the case.
Yeah. So I sent it. I met with Brian and Graham. We hit it off. It was just awesome. It was one of those things where it was just new and exciting. It was putting everything I love together. At the time, I was just insatiably thinking about food and cocktails and music and taking in every form of medium and all those and studying, and it just made a lot of sense.
What was it about the Jones Assembly that caught your attention? What was the appeal? What was the draw for you? Why was it so something you wanted to be a part of?
I mean, first and foremost, like if you walk in this building, it is a striking building. Truly. It's beautiful. It's unique. It's different. And that's what grabbed me, was this idea of being a music venue that also did all of these things in an elevated way, because I had these two worlds, but they were so separate before. So it was like a music venue was a music venue. My craft cocktail bar was a craft cocktail bar. And they were looking me in the eye and saying, you don't have to separate these. And in my head and the way I work, I immediately was like, I need to figure that out. I need to be at the forefront of that. I need to be a part of this to see how this works, just out of curiosity alone. Like, how do you do this? And so
prior to, the Jones Assembly catching your attention, had you ever seen the combination of food and like cocktail and concert venue work well?
Not in this way. I mean, you have like House of Blues, who always has a restaurant connected to the venue, but never in the same space. They're all over. It's a Live Nation venue. So
I stopped at BB King's in Memphis on the way here and grabbed some food. I actually thought that I was going to like Blue Flats. There's a restaurant across the street.
Yeah.
They just said look for the sign, and there was a line. So I was like, oh, this must be it. And I realized I was in BB King's, and I was like, oh shit, I'm not where I was going, but this is awesome.
Yeah.
And then I ended up getting ribs, and then I got more ribs at the restaurant I was trying to go to.
As you have to. As you have to in Memphis.
But anyway, but they seem to be pulling it off, this idea of like really great food in a beautiful music venue.
Yeah.
It's like tiered with like a bar. It was cool. But sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
No. And I think that's like, if you look at it now, I think there's a lot of markets and venues that have gone in that direction. You've got Dahlia Hall in Chicago, and they have a Michelin star restaurant connected, cool. Which is crazy. Beautiful venue, but nobody had done it where, at that point that I had ever seen, where it was such a unique way to do it, where the entire building opens up, where all the furniture moves under the stage.
This restaurant transforms.
Yeah, it transforms.
So it's a dining room during normal business hours, and then all of the furniture moves underneath the stage. The wall lifts or slides.
Yeah, so we have two walls that lift and one wall that accordions.
So it goes out into open air, like it's an indoor-outdoor stage. And it seems to be like well engineered.
Yes.
Where it's like not a lot of labor to make it happen. It just kind of slides. It just happens.
It's an incredible design. It's so uniquely designed, so well thought out. And that was kind of one of the other things that grabbed me was they took the time to think of all of the things that needed to be thought of. And that's really why I was like, I have to work with these people. I have to do this. And so, that led, initially it was a consulting thing. We were going to do like 20 hours a week, and I was going to help, train their staff and train their GM at the time who was younger and had never done music venue. And that quickly became like, I didn't want to leave, it was like 20 hour weeks turned into 100-hour weeks because it was fun and we were opening something that was special and new and unique. And so about 2 months in, I just said, guys, I don't want to consult anymore for people. Like, this is it for me. You guys have put together all my passions. I love it here. I feel ingrained. Do you think that we could have a conversation? And they welcomed me with open arms and said, we thought you never asked. Like, let's build a role.
I love it. You're making me think of, I'm really into Dr. Benjamin Hardy's books right now. He partnered with Dan Sullivan, like one of the most, I think, a strategic consulting or something like that. His business, one of the most well-known business consultants out there. And he's taking all of Dan Sullivan's like knowledge and putting them into books. You might have heard of 10x is easier than 2x, Who Not How, The Gap in the Gain. I'm actually keeping my fingers crossed I'll be able to get him on the show on my way
That'd
back
be awesome.
east. I can't. I hope. I'm talking to his people. And in those books, they talk about everyone's like desire for freedom, right? Call it autonomy, freedom, whatever. But there's 4 types of freedom, and they talk about freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of relationships, and freedom of purpose. And I think that when you're prioritizing those things, I think that most people think of like time and money, but I think really you want to invert that and think of freedom of purpose, freedom of relationships. Because if you have freedom of purpose and freedom of relationships, you can, if you have the right why, you can deal with any how, and you can spend, and you're doing it with the people you love that you want to do it with. Like, you can work 80-hour weeks, and if it's your passion, like, it doesn't feel like work. You're doing the thing that you love to do. I mean, I'm not saying that we should all strive to work 80-hour weeks, but when you are finding that purpose, the thing that you're put on this earth to do, and you're doing it with people you friggin' love, your partners, Graham and Brian, and like what's going on here, the money and time will come. The time's taken care of because you're doing what you love. The money will come.
Absolutely.
And I think I got in trouble of chasing money at one point, and I lost purpose in relationships, and my time sucked.
Yeah. As an entrepreneur, and I can say this, I still have that bug. I still want to push and open new things and try new things. There's always a random business in my head, whether it be, a firewood company because I see a lack of that in our market, or whatever it is. There was a part of me in the past that would just immediately jump into that. It was like, I got to do 5 things to make money. And I will say, like, the moment that I dedicated to this one purpose has been the most success in my career.
Yeah.
More doors have opened, more things have happened, more financial freedom has happened. But also, it's very accurate that I also stopped thinking about the financial side of it. It was just like, as long as I'm healthy and happy and my family's healthy and happy, we don't need the 900 creature comforts that come with the rest of it. That doesn't make you happy. It doesn't provide you with that if you're miserable all day when you're spending this much time in a place.
Yeah.
And so that became for me this kind of like rallying cry. And I can tell you, 8 years in now, it feels like we're 2 years in. And I think that's the beauty of it.
Yeah. Thanks for getting into that. And where was the Jones assembly when you came? Were they open when you came on board, or was it about to open?
No, it was built, and they were basically developing out systems and operations at the time. And kind of figuring out what we were going to do. It was menu development. It was, how is this menu going to work? And I will say the biggest thing and kind of what made this again so interesting to me and so ingrained was that they were open to hearing other ideas, other opinions, other options. And really the sum of the whole is what's made the Jones successful. You know, it's everybody coming together to make things as good as it can be, you know, and to keep pushing. And even 8 years in, like, we don't take our foot off the gas. We're still pushing.
So isn't that one of the other 7 habits of highly effective people? You know, it's think synergetic. Is
Yeah,
that what it is?
synergetic.
Yeah. And that is like coming together and finding, you know, synergies between people and roles and skills, and like slingshotting off of each other, you know, going further together.
Yeah.
So, man, so much to cover right now. So you were really here from day one.
Yes.
Essentially. You weren't a part of the build out, but you were here from opening day to present
Yes.
day. You said that they created a role for you.
Uh-huh.
What was your original title?
So director of operations was the initial role we created. You know, we already had a GM.
It's not really that creative.
Yeah, exactly. So it was kind of, they were like, what do you want to do? What do you think? And I said, here's what I'm good at. What do you think that is for you?
So I know you've kind of like told us what you're good at, but paraphrase what you told them that you're good at.
Yeah. So I just said, you know, I think I'm really great at developing systems, developing ways to work within those systems, being malleable with my systems. When I see something not working, it's not going to be something that, you know, we either go straight into like, we're changing it now, or we go into this, it's this way or the highway. Really, to me, it's breaking down, like, is the system broken, or is the people in the system not operating in the system?
I think, I can't remember where I heard this. Maybe it's from Traction. When you're putting people in the roles, they have to get it, want it, and have the possibility, get it, want it, and the capability to do it. So do they understand the responsibility? Do they get it? Do they have a desire to take on that role? So they don't want to do it, then they're not going to do it to their full potential. And do they have the ability to do it? So when you're looking, if things aren't going wrong, did the system fail the people, or are the people failing the system? That's
exactly.
what I'm hearing from you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, I said, these are the things I'm good at. Outside of that, I love numbers. I love making sure that I hit numbers. It is just a personal thing for me. I love the game, as we talked about, and how to get there. I love that competitive side. I'm super, personally competitive. And then leadership just sets me on fire. I love leading people. I love talking about leadership. I love reading about leadership. I love trying new tactics of leadership. And it's not a one size fits all thing. And that's, you know, we have 112 employees. I get to lead a massive group of people. We always joke, like, it is a true factory still. We are a factory with that many people. You know, that's that level of staff. And so that just, you know, I get to flex that leadership muscle in so many different ways, in such unique ways day to day, that it's just so fun for me to be able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I like to focus on evolution. You know, the mission statement is to inspire, empower, and transform. We inspire with your story. We empower with the knowledge that's coming out of you, but the transformation of, like, really focusing on your transformation to show other people how they can transform. So I think the 3 areas to focus on going forward, talking about the evolution of you and the Jones Assembly over the past 8 years, congratulations. I want to focus on numbers. I want to focus on operations, and I want to focus on your leadership evolution. So from 2017, when you opened this place, looking at operations and numbers, like, take me through your evolution, like the growth, the roadblocks, and how you evolved to overcome with operations, and then how the numbers started to reflect the evolution.
Yeah. So there's several ways that's transformed. And I think, you know, now I think you talk in chapters or eras. You know, there's pre-COVID and there's post-COVID.
Yeah. What are those chapters, real quick, so we can just get them out? So it's like, go like 30,000 feet and cruise and get us to present day and like the points of evolution.
Yeah. So, you know, really the first 2 years were, what are we? How do we operate? How do we change that? You know, when we first started, 250 covers felt like a crushing day. You know, now we'll knock out 600 like it's nothing. And that came down to how we're ringing in food, how we're waiting on our teams, how how we're getting food out to people.
Let's just focus on the points of evolution real quick, and then we'll go into those.
Okay,
so
cool.
17 and 19 was Who Are We?
Yeah, 17 to 19 is Who Are We.
What happened in 19? Between 19 and when? What was like the next point of evolution?
19 and 20, I mean, we were cruising into
COVID.
COVID. We were cruising into it. So that was like, that was, we are who we are, and we know who we are at this point. And our staff had been there. So it was really like, we're vets at this point.
Then 2020 happens.
2020 happens.
And you have a large venue that houses a lot of people.
Yeah.
We can touch on that
yeah.
when the time comes, but what happens, when do things start to change after 2020?
So things changed in 2020. We came out of that, or we knew we were opening. We were opening with literally 3 of us left, more or less.
3 people that.
Yeah.
So you lost all of your staff.
We lost everyone.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you, Graham, Brian.
Yeah. I mean, so all of our ownership and a big portion of our management stayed. But as far as like our core staff went, we went from, people that had been here for 3 years to having 3 people that had been here ever.
Is Charlie one of those people?
Charlie was one of those people.
So Charlie was actually, for listeners, Charlie actually put me in touch with this group.
Yeah.
He was a listener of the show, and I think he inspired me to come out here to Oklahoma City and get some folks on the show. So got to tip my hat to Charlie and his
Absolutely.
influence.
And he was a huge part of our chapters here.
Yeah. So 2020, March 2020, screeching halt. When did things get back to normal after that?
So I won't say back to normal, but we'll touch on the numbers part. We learned out of necessity how to operate really efficiently here.
Okay, so you were
during
cruising.
COVID.
Yeah. So you were cruising before COVID. Like you found your cruising altitude and you were going, but then you really kind of like...
We honed in on our actual operations at that point.
Got it.
Before, we're busy. And so I think when you're busy, there's a lot more luxury within that to say, hey, like, I'm not going to focus on this area as much. Paper goods, paper goods are paper goods for us. We're busy. Like, there's not a lot of room. Is it worth my time? Everyone goes through that. So you have your managers, your GMs, everyone going through that. Well, during COVID, it was, we don't know what's going to happen. We need to save every penny possible.
Got it. So it was, what are we? Who are we? To we know who we are, to honing in. And was that 2020 to 2025, or is there another point of evolution?
I would say there's another point of evolution.
What's
so
that?
2020 to 2021, we really figured out how to operate. 22 to current, we figured out how to operate in the same way, but at a mass volume, and how to increase that, and how to turn on different areas of our
Let's go back to 2017 now. So 2017, 2019, you're what are we, who are we? Take us through that evolution. Go deeper.
Yeah, so what are we, who are we? That was what kind of cocktails are we putting out? We have 2 different cocktail bars within our building, how those are going to be separate. Pretty quickly, we figured out that our upstairs cocktail bar really people wanted for a private event space. So we started working on pivoting to a private event space up here. We're still open on the days that we're not private, but now it's become a huge part of our business model to be, to have this area. We're very lucky to have an area that we can still host 175 people.
You can fit 175 people?
Yeah.
Wow, this is awesome.
Yeah. So,
so how much of your, like when you have an event, I mean, how are you using this space? I'm curious.
Yeah, so we do a couple of different things. I mean, there's multiple ways for us to do events. We approach events very differently, but for the most part, we offer food packages, we offer drink packages, and then we have a very robust AV option. So
this is with the private events.
Yeah. So you can do presentations, you can do all of it, and we kind of have different things that we can turn on. So we get to do a lot of really unique stuff up here.
And when there's a venue, is it like VIP or something like that? Or
yeah, so during the venue, we sell this as a separate ticket. We also sell our booth spaces as kind of an elevated ticket model as well.
Is this like premium here?
Yes.
Yeah. It's so for the listeners, it's overlooking. So if I look out to like in front of me, like the bar's behind me, and out in front of me is the venue itself, and you have like a beautiful like view of the stage. It's a really great spot to be. So, so you're figuring out, okay, so you have all these different spaces you have to work with, and that's what you're trying to figure out. You have a bar downstairs, you got a bar up here, you also have a bar outside too.
And we have a bar outside, and that was a newer addition. At the time, we didn't have that outside, and honestly, like out of that evolution came because now we have this whole other area that we're like, we need to be able to activate this in a different way. We need to be able to increase our volume because there's a demand for it. We need to be able to get drinks in people's hands quicker, food in people's hands quicker. So all of those things kind of evolved during that time period. And we evolved our model and our systems. We started out, there was so many discussions on, do we course our food? Do we just ring it in? How do we run it? All of those things we've just honed in. And I think what's made us successful is that we've never stopped being curious. We've never stopped wondering if we could do it just a little bit better here, or a little tweak here, what that means for the guest. And we've just stayed so guest focused, and we do that through our staff, and so that's the evolution of our culture has been a huge part of that too, of wanting to empower our staff, take care of our staff, educate our staff, pour into them. And that's created opportunities. Like I said, we had very relatively low turnover, especially for our industry pre-COVID. Post-COVID,
I'm sure they were making money.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Making money, but also like I will hang our hat. Like everybody has done such a great job of making this a place where people want to come from a work perspective. For the most part, it doesn't mean we get it right every day, but 90% of the time we are really, really in sync with our staff of what their needs are.
So by 2019, the way you were doing things, you said you found out who you are and what you are, right? Has like the general operation changed much since 2019, 6 years? Is it more or less the same standard operating procedures, and over time you kind of just tweaked and really honed it in? Like, has there been major changes since then?
I wouldn't say major changes. We added some things. How we report, we've used data in a big way.
We'll use that later. But I guess what I want to get from 17 and 19, what was your personal and the organization biggest challenges and evolutions that are kind of universally, like, we can learn from these?
Yeah, so I would say the biggest evolution is that we stopped trying to be all things for everyone. So I think in a place this big, you naturally are like, okay, well, we need to be able to do everything. But really, what we needed to focus on was our food, our spirits, and our music. Mm-hmm. And so we really got down to the nitty-gritty on what that meant, and how that affected our guests. And so I would say we siloed each individual area and said, okay, what's working here, what's not, and let's scrap what's not. And we just got really lean in that way, instead of trying to develop multiple cocktail menus in a space that was mostly being used for events. We started to streamline what the guests wanted, what those offerings were, and really build out a menu that spoke to more people and spoke less maybe to this idea of like, we just need to change it all the time because people want something new. Well, we found out people really didn't. They really liked what we were providing, and they got so engaged with it that they wanted it. And so we would end up making cocktails from 2 menus ago more than we would make our current menu cocktails. And so there were a lot of areas like that we got to just kind of start to streamline and figure out and start executing at a level that was beyond the norm for our market. We got to really hone that in.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Kathleen Wood and her, what's your one thing? And Ed Doherty, past guest too, you 1 degree. And what they're talking about is like, don't try to be everything to everybody. Focus your identity. Figure out what it is that you're really good at. That where's the hole in the market, and be that one thing. And for you guys, because you offered food, drink, and music, like, so you kind of had the one thing for each one of those. And then, so what was the one thing for food for you?
The one thing for food for us was, and I think this is interesting in Oklahoma in general. I would say that Oklahoma doesn't have really like a strong food identity. The South is the South. The Midwest is the Midwest. Northeast is Northeast. Our food identity has been really affected through so many ways. Like, we have a great agricultural community here, but also we brought in so many people here. We brought in so many people during the land
transplants.
Yeah, a lot of transplants. We brought in so many people, from the Native American side. And so there's not this cohesive kind of food waste story for us because it's coming from all over. Like, okra is one of our staples. Well, okra is, a West African product brought over, from the Carolinas and Florida, but it's become part of our culture. And so I think for the Jones, we started to really hone in on like utilizing the ingredients that we have from farms and special places in Oklahoma, and just letting those be the star and start to think of our food in a way that was very much letting ingredients speak for themselves, not trying to overcomplicate it, not trying to be one note, maybe not trying to be, just French cooking or just this or just that, and kind of say, these are things that we have at our fingertips, and we need to utilize those in the proper ways, pay them homage, pay them respect, and just let these ingredients talk. And I think once we really honed in on that, that became our food identity.
What about drink?
Drink, that one thing there, and the ethos that we instill in our team is that it is about what the guest wants. We want to be experts in guest relations. How do we talk about what you want to get the right thing in your hand? I think oftentimes bars get really focused on what they love. Bartenders get really focused on what they love. And we forget that not everybody has the same palate. And especially for a place that does the level of people that we do, we're going to get people from all areas of the world, all walks of life, and they're not going to have the same palate, right? Like, I may love a super bitter, boozy stir drink, but there's a lot of people that don't. And so I would be doing a disservice to give that guest what I like when they might want, something light and sour.
I think the only time it works is when you're kind of creating what you want. The one time it works is when I think you are the target market. So
Correct.
Like I'll think about Ben Goldberg and Max Goldberg, right? Nashville.
Agreed.
When they started strategic hospitality, or when Ben started in restaurants, he was 23 years old and he was in Nashville, and he spent time in Miami, and I think his brother was in New York. Like, they went to these places that were like live and hip and happening and trendy, and they came back to Nashville and they're like, where's ours? So they built what they wanted, but they were 23-year-old people who would like to go out and party, and they had roots in Nashville. They grew up there, So I think the only time it works is like if you literally are creating something and you represent what that market needs. Yeah, right. It can happen, but it's
and I think there are bars that is what they do, and that's what they do best. That's their thing,
right?
And so I think those places are great. I mean, like, you look at like an Attaboy. Right? Like, I want them to make me what they're feeling. I don't need to try to tell them. And now they're still going to ask the questions, what spirits do you like? What, they're going to get some things out of you to make the best experience for you still. But at the end of the day, like, that's what you're going there for, right? You're going there for their ability to create in that size of environment. With us here, we have that ability, and sometimes that's what's best for the guest is they say, I honestly, like, I want you to make me something special, unique. That's what the guest wants that day. But there's also the guest that says, hey, walk me through your menu. I normally tend to gear towards daiquiris. What do you have like a daiquiri? And we're going to find that right fit for you, because that's when it comes down to for us is finding what that patron wants. And we feel like we can make anything. So we want to get that in your hands, and we want to try to make it a menu cocktail if we can. And if we can't, we're going to make you something bespoke, and it's going to be awesome. But that's really, for us, is when we honed in on that guest experience for the drink side.
Got it. So you identified, for food, your one thing was sourcing locally and just letting the food speak for itself. For drink, it was really reverse engineering what the customer was looking for and giving them what they want. And for the music, I think we kind of talked about this earlier. It was really about high level, like really choosing the artists that you want to work with. But do you want to just add one more level of like your one thing or your focus on that?
Yeah, I would say we really started focusing on the experience overall. So it's all got to start working together. We started doing, for certain acts, we do special cocktails for certain.
Were you doing this back in 2017?
To an extent, I don't think we had quite honed in on what that was for us. Like, we still had a great beverage program. We still had great bands. But 2017, we're a new venue. We're starting out. We had to prove to people the level of venue we were.
Where'd you get by 2019 in terms of the venue?
By 2019, we had bands actively wanting to come to us, actively telling their agents, like, that's my favorite venue. We took the same approach for the artists. I will say, like, we have a different approach to when an artist gets here. We try to have something special that we've researched, that we've done, a unique hospitality experience. I mean, everything for us ties back to that. It ties back to hospitality. And we do that because we want you, when you walk in, like, most venues are just, like I said, like, you don't want to hang out in a venue. It's boring, and it's empty, and it's cold, and it's dark, and it's just like, it's utilitarian at that point. For us, we want you to walk in and feel like a respite from the road. We want you to want to hang out in our green room, to drink our unique coffee that we've picked for that day, to eat the food that we create versus going to a restaurant, because that's a unique opportunity that we have to give someone a home cooked meal. And to me, like, a home cooked meal is the epitome of hospitality when you're coming from the road, right? You get to eat at restaurants all the time. That becomes kind of boring. Mm-hmm. So we try to offer up these opportunities for people to pick and cater to what they want to create this opportunity. Like, we've got a show coming up this Thursday that we're still innovating. Like, it's a country concert. They're sold out. It's a big band called Shane Smith and the Saints. We love them. We've been working on getting the show for 5+ years. Their routing hadn't worked out, all these things. So we finally have them, and we're determined that this will be their favorite venue on this tour. So I have a famous cowboy hat shaper and maker, Shorties, coming over from the stockyards. They're going to do a special pop-up just for the band to be able to pick out hats that they might want, to shape their hats, to show them how the process works. That sets us apart.
What up, unstoppable restaurant owners and operators? We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that Restaurant Unstoppable and Restaurant Systems Pro, we're taking our relationship to the next level. Beginning in July of 2024, Fred Langley, CEO of Restaurant Systems Pro, is making himself available once a week in Restaurant Unstoppable Network to answer all of your restaurant systems questions, whether it's the profit margins. He will look at your P&L. Bring your P&L. He will take a look at that. He will dissect it. He will help you find your profit, whether that be through budgeting, inventory management, costing recipe cards, labor, checklists, you name it. He is a master on restaurant systems, and he's making himself available to you. Fred Langley and Restaurant Systems Pro started as a consulting firm, and for over 16 years, they've been helping their clients increase their profit by 10% or more. What are you waiting for? Click the link below to join our Facebook group, Restaurant Unstoppable Network.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, again, kind of tying it back to like Danny Myers and Light and Hospitality is like, I also think of like Joe Rogan and what he's doing with his talent.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like we forget that the talent is what's creating the experience. I mean, we contribute to it with our hospitality and our food and our drink, but at the end of the day, the people are coming for the talent. And if you're looking at historically, the talent hasn't always been taken really great care of by the venue, so if you can extend, so it's, your inner guests, like your employees, then it's your customers, then it's your community, then it's your vendors. And I think that, your vendors in the world of the experience economy are your talent, the people that are like, you're getting the experience from. Right? You got to take care of those people. You got to treat them with hospitality. And the example I'm using with Joe Rogan is what he did at the mothership with his comedians. There's a reason why the talent, like the show, the comics are so good there, is because he reverse engineered that venue to put the comic first. Yeah. Because in his experience traveling the country, they were an afterthought. So because of that, it's like this we go further together mentality and take care of the talent. You will rise to the top as a result.
Yeah, that's the absolute point. Graham and I both spent countless days. I mean, both of us used to be out 250 plus days a year in venues, and so you knew what venues were great and what venues weren't. And when you got your tour routing from your agent, there were shows that you're like, I cannot wait for this. And there were shows that you're like, man, I really don't like that place.
Yeah.
Really don't like that venue. And the people and the experience are such a huge part of that, because every venue is a venue. At a certain point, it's a wide open room in which you can fit good amounts of people in.
Yeah.
So, it's what you do outside of that sets you apart. And that's what became important.
Yeah. So we covered a lot in the 2017 to 2019 era where you're trying to figure out who we are. But the one thing we didn't talk about really, we talked about operations. I don't think it's worth talking about the numbers yet, because you were still figuring it out, right? I think it makes more sense to talk later about the numbers. But how did you evolve as a leader?
Yeah. So, I think my evolution as a leader, some of it, prior to here, I had led, teams of 20, teams of 30, never led a team of 100 plus. And so that showed me very, very quickly that leadership isn't one size fits all. Some people are super great with hard coaching. Some people are not. Some people are super great with a light touch, and some people need something different. They need frank conversations. They need to be able to voice things. They need to be able to have uncomfortable conversations and feel safe in that environment. And so I think my evolution as a leader
during this period, because we're going to talk about the continued evolution later.
Yeah, during this period really became, like 2017 to 2019, it became about managing people that I wanted to invest in and show that they could have a career in this industry versus, in Oklahoma, and I think in a lot of markets, a lot of times you get that kind of, but what do you want to do? And it's like, I want to be a server. There's a lot of value in that, and people can make a great living at that. And hospitality is a real field, and you shouldn't have to feel like you have to become a manager or whatever else to have that. So we started thinking about it, and I will credit Brian to the day I die for showing me this path and this side is, we started investing in that early on from a career perspective of offering, healthcare to people who worked here who averaged 30 hours a week, to offering, at this point we match 401ks.
Wow.
We do paid time leave.
Yeah. It's funny because you hear like the narrative from the industry is like, why won't anybody treat us seriously?
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, why don't we treat our employees seriously?
Correct.
Like you got to give before you get.
Yeah.
And I think that has definitely changed a lot in the past few years. I think, with the mass exodus of people, the great resignation, right?
Yeah.
We started to realize, well, we have to do something or else we're never going to get people back. And I think the consumer hasn't quite caught up to that realization because they acclimated to an industry that abused its people. And that's why we could keep costs low. But if we're going to take care of people, I think we have to start educating the consumer that like you need to pay more if you want to go out and save your time not cooking, be transported to an amazing experience. And like these things come at a cost. And anyway, I think I digress. We can talk about that later. But okay, let's transition to 2019 to 2020. During this year period, you said that you start, you're cruising, who you are. I guess kind of get into like the details of what that looked like in terms of numbers and operations and in leadership.
Yeah. So we started, during that period of time, we started to really be able to execute at a really high level for more and more people. We found ways to streamline, our operations, how to save costs in the right metrics, but also spend in the right areas.
Getting more into that cost and spending in the right metrics.
Yeah. So, I think that oftentimes you get focused on, and I'm the first to say this, like pennies are in the margins, and they are, but there are certain areas that you cannot skimp on. And I think that's one area we do really well of, like we invest in, like if we're going to do an event, we're going to go all out for that event. We're going to pour into it, and it's going to be unlike any other. It's going to be fully immersive, and we're going to spend the money, and we might spend it knowing that, it's going to take 2-3 years for that event to really get to its full potential. So there's areas like that we invest in early and we invest in often to make that happen.
So when you create an event, your intention with this event is to have it be a recurring event.
Most of the time.
Got it.
Yeah, most of the time. Sometimes it's one-off, but I'll use St. Patrick's Day as a great example. Like we had basically like one St. Patrick's Day event in Oklahoma City, for a long time. And we just, the first couple of years, our St. Patrick's Day, like people showed up, we served some green beer, we threw out some swag, and we called it a day. And we had great numbers, right? We could have easily stopped there and been like, hey, great, we had a $60,000 day. How great. But we kept pushing the idea of offering a unique experience for St. Patrick's Day. And that has grown now and evolved into utilizing the street, which we get to close down for certain events, moving a lot of things outdoors, having more artists, having more bands, doing less. Like we used to just say, we're going to serve brunch and we're going to serve dinner and everybody will just drink around it. Whereas now we've moved into a model of, actually letting it be a fully immersive party, changing our menu offerings for that day to reflect that, finding ways to capitalize on that and to frankly bring the most amount of people that we can to experience this. And so, I think that's when we talk about that spending and those metrics and those events that we want to own. Those are areas we want to keep investing in and we want to keep growing and we want to keep streamlining and we want to keep adding to, so that frankly, we can be that pillar of the community that is a safe place to go for a great event.
Right. And it's this idea of not comparing yourself to anybody else, but to yourself the day before, but in this example, the year before. How can we outbeat ourselves? Because if you're not outbeating yourself, somebody else will eventually catch up and surpass you. So I think what I'm hearing is like, when it comes to, investing in these experiences, don't be stingy.
Yeah.
Because it's about creating repeat like loyalty to this event over time. It will compound.
Exactly. And so we found it, we've tripled in size, for this event, if not more. And then on the other side, there are areas where you always want to be cost effective. It's not going to do anybody any good to have more labor than you need on, because your employees are going to make less and, you're going to make less because you're spending more on labor and so on. But also it's a fine line if you don't want to be understaffed. And so finding that fine line, we're always looking at our labor and how to be the most effective with it, how to make sure everybody gets equitable amounts of hours, equitable amounts of shifts, and also is making the money that they need to make to be successful and to survive, and to thrive for that matter. And so, there's always areas like that we're constantly looking at, tweaking. You can never take your eye off that because each week's different, especially here. We have major, like a week like this week, we had a buyout of our venue last night. We have a concert on Thursday. We have a benefit concert on Sunday. That's 3 unique events in 1 week, which takes a totally different style of scheduling, a totally different management of team than a week where you're just operating as a restaurant. So
also with every event you pull, you get a feel for what to expect. And do you start to like segment and categorize your events so that like, okay, this is a such and such type of event, like run such and such and like playbook.
Yeah,
absolutely. So like you have like, what you're going to need. So like you don't know until you know though.
Exactly.
So like you need to get the repetitions, and that's kind of sounds like what was happening during 2019 and 20 is like you got 2 years of reps in and you're starting to see patterns and you can predict what you're going to need so you can really tweak those numbers.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, we're floating in. And I mean, when we closed for COVID, it was St. Patrick's Day weekend. We had a concert. I mean, we were poised.
St. Patrick's Day happen or not?
It happened.
At least you got it in.
It happened kind of.
Oh,
it wasn't. Yeah, because I mean, here, we were the forefront of this because we had the Oklahoma City Thunder basketball game that kind of shut down the world. When all the NBA players started getting it, they had to cancel the game. All of that happened here in our market, and so we didn't really know what to expect, and so we got to get it in. But I mean, I would say that it was definitely, not. It was a more cautious event than it would have been without.
Got it. Anything worth unpackaging beyond what you shared in terms of 2019 to 2020? When like really fine tuning. What about you as a leader? How did you evolve?
Yeah. So that was just a wild year for me. I had my first and only child. I literally canceled our concert from the hospital room. Like I had her 2 days before our full shutdown. So, I was already figuring out in a lot of ways how to balance my life. Going into that was really focused on, how do I have prior to having a kid, all I thought about, was work and my wife. And that was great and easy. And you could balance that. And nights, we're in a nighttime business. So, you're not worried about that. You're like, yeah, we get our time when we get our time. Our weekends can be Mondays and Tuesdays. They don't have to be Saturdays and Sundays and all of that. So I was starting to wrap my head around having a kid. And obviously that comes with tons of different feelings and anxieties and all of the lot. But it also came with a lot of introspection of what I wanted my legacy as a leader to be, how to lead people, the way, you start thinking about, how would I want my kid led? Right. It opens up a different part of your brain, I would say. And so at that point, I started really evolving as a leader in how I would say, like, not that I wasn't an empathetic leader before, but I really started to think about empathy and leadership. I really started, I'm a huge Simon Sinek fan. I was really deep into that book, into my whys and Leaders Eat Last and Infinite Game. And so there were all these kind of worlds floating around, and I was thinking about, how to impact our staff in that way, how to find their whys, and how to find my role of being in that, and letting them step out in front and lead more. Because, as the top brass, I think you're always in a position where it's very easy to just say, do it my way, or to do it for someone, or to say, this is how we do it. And I really started to understand the value of being able to have open conversations, to listen more than I talked, to understand more than before I made a decision, to let things sink in, to just take more time. So I think when you're in a busy place, it's action all the time. It's decision, 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 decision. And sometimes that's necessary, but sometimes I found taking a step back, and I found this during that period, I would really say 2019, taking a step back and letting it kind of naturally sit for a minute, to learn from it, to study it, to understand it, versus just being like, we have to make a decision now, and that's the decision. Yeah. Became a really important part of my leadership.
First seek to understand, then seek to be understood.
That's it.
Right. And what is your why?
My why is that at the end of the day, I want to be the best version of myself from a humanity's sake. And to me, the best way to do that is to pour into people and to show that side of myself and to talk about that side of myself. So for me, that why is I really love pouring into people. Yeah. I want to pour into people all day long. If I could choose something to do, it would literally be to sit with my staff every day and talk and give them myself and give them understanding and discussion and so on. You don't get to do that, but I spend a good portion of my time making sure that that's a part of my staff and myself's ability.
Got it. So how does that tie into your and the Jones Assembly's? Well, first, what is the Infinity Game? What does that mean? When Simon Sinek wrote that book, what was he communicating?
Yeah, that one's just really struck a chord with me, because being a competitive person, especially a self-competitive person, I was always, for a long time, I was like, how do we judge ourselves? How do we know that we're doing this, or winning for that matter? And so to hear it put so eloquently in the form of that, the true best game is the never-ending game. It's the game against yourself. It's not the game against others.
It's the game in pursuit of perfection, knowing that you'll never achieve
knowing that you're never going to achieve it.
Yeah.
That part just is incredible to me, because that just spoke to me personally, as far as, I stopped looking for other things, or that's the moment that I stopped being like, well, I need to go open 5 more restaurants to be successful. I started to think, and this is now my major purpose, and I should have said this is a big part of my why now, is I think that it is so much more cool and crazy and incredible to think about, can I make something that lasts 40 years?
Right.
Versus something like, I mean, you can have a hot restaurant for 8 years. Like that's an achievable thing in my head. But to last 40 years, to be one of those staples that you see now, or that you especially saw, you know, in years past, where you have these places that are like established in 1936, that's incredible. True. How do you do that? How do you stay there? And so for me, I want my legacy to be long after I'm out of the game. And I want people to still be like, what's your favorite place? Jones Assembly.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. There's a lot of parallels between Simon Sinek's The Infinite Game, or The Infinity Game?
Infinity Game, yeah.
Yeah, Infinity Game. And big fan of Joe Pines. You know, he wrote The Experience Economy, and he's about to release his book, The Transformation Economy. And in those books, like I think the underlying message is the same, is that we're now in this the future is in transforming each other, and in transforming society, in finding, like he talks about in Start With Why, Simon Sinek, like it's like, why do we do this? Like, people will be drawn to you and your organization for the change you want to see in the world. And then the Infinity Game is about creating that change, that constant evolution of we are in this world, you know, Moore's Law, where the world is changing exponentially around us in terms of technology. But I think we forget that we're learning more about this, like science is technology, right? And we're learning more about biological evolutions, psychological evolution, and our brains and our bodies, and what conditions in things that help us run optimally, you know. Yeah. And the more and more we learn about us and like our happiness and our physical wellness, the more opportunity there is to go with the grain and to live better lives, right? And to be a part of this transformation of like, how do we make society better? How do we create a situation where we all win, except for not just the very few at the top? And I think that's a lot of what my why is, of like recognizing that like there are things that like if we continue down this path, like it's not going to be good for the independent restaurant sector, right? Like we have to change, and we have to influence society to change, or else we're kind of heading in a bad place.
Yeah, it truly is an ecosystem, you know, in my opinion. And all things have to work with each other, and all things to an extent need to be equitable. And so I think if you get out of balance in those areas, especially from a humanity's sake, like, you know, you lose what makes us as humans special. Yeah. That ability to connect, that ability to speak, to respect, to treat each other well, you know, to be a good functioning member of society. And I think that is, you know, that's what we want here. Is I want, you know, we always say like, I want a guy to walk in sweatpants and sit next to a gal who's in a gala dress from a wedding, who's next to, you know, a kid who's celebrating their 9th birthday, and everyone to feel comfortable and awesome in our space. Yeah. And like that to me that's the ultimate achievement, is that it is a place where people can gather, enjoy each other, and just have a great experience and get to know people, you know, get to interact with people. And maybe that's our staff, maybe that's the person next to them. Like that's what we're trying to create here, is that level of camaraderie and ability to come together in a great gathering space.
I love that. And if you're listening to this, you know, what is your why? What is the end game that, you know, what is your infinity, you know, not end game, but the infinity game, right? The thing that you can create that serves this idea of making the world a better place. Like that's how you're going to attract onto yourself the people that will help you go that distance, you know? So like start racking your brain. What does this look like for me? How can I make my dent in the world that I live in? So let's jump to 2022 to 2025. You said that's really where you kind of like honed in and you became a well-oiled, well-maintained concert venue, food, cocktail machine. So like, I guess kind of paint the picture of where you are today. Like what do your systems look like? What do your numbers look like?
Yeah. So, numbers wise, I mean, we kind of touched on it earlier, but we're hitting all of the areas we want to hit. We're hovering in that 20% direct operating profit area. That's really our goal at the end of the day. And the great part about that is everything's gone up. So we've been able to maintain our percentages through our systems. So there's a ton of things that we're doing differently now. We're using, as I said, we're using data more than ever. We're using different companies to help with that. Like we have a company, Sculpture Hospitality, that does our inventory management. So they come in every Monday, they inventory our whole restaurant. And we're able to use that data to order more efficiently, to see where we're having losses in a better way than maybe like a manual way. And so it's just tracked so much more accurately.
So real quick, run through the biggest implementations you've had in the past 3 years. So you said Culture Hospitality?
Yeah. So
were you using them? I think, or by you was, what's the name of the overarching restaurant group? There's so many. I talk to so many people. Thank you very much. Social Order. Uh-huh. Was that the accounting firm they started using way back?
No. So Sculpture Hospitality.
You saying sculpture or culture?
Sculpture.
Sculpture. Okay.
Yeah. I had used them in previous things, and so when we first started here, we felt like inventory management was something we really needed to do on our own so that you can understand it and feel it. And I think that was really important because I think all of our management team, my beverage director who's been with us since the beginning, etc., really has an understanding of our inventory and where things are at, where they're placed, how they are, when they're wasted, how they're wasted. And we got that from being really hands-on with it. Now, utilizing a company, we get to really hone that in. It's the difference between having someone, it's a time asset versus a time debt. I don't have my guy in there with the scale weighing every single bottle that takes, 15 hours for him to do. I've got a team that comes in, has all their own equipment, their own scanning technology, etc. We have this just incredible accuracy within this. So now my beverage director, instead of taking, 10, 12 hours of their day inventorying, they can take several hours to analyze the data, make important decisions, especially in a place where we have the swings we're talking about here, where one week maybe just be straight restaurant and another week we're going to have, 2 massive concerts that require us to bring a beer trailer in to have enough beer on hand. Those things are unique problems to us. And so we found good systems, good partners, and good ways to operate within all of that, to utilize everything to our advantage, to make our margins where we want them.
Yeah. So Sculpture Hospitality, do they do just liquor inventory, or are they doing food and beverage?
They do food and beverage. We added the food component this year.
Okay. So,
or 2024.
Before Sculpture, how often were you doing inventory?
We did inventory month or weekly so that we had our ordering.
Were you doing sheet to shelf?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what software were you using in terms of where were you entering this inventory before?
I built a custom spreadsheet.
Okay. So you're not using a Restaurant Systems Pro or a Restaurant 365, an enterprise solution?
We weren't.
Are you today?
No.
Okay.
We use this company. I mean, they work in the same way as a Restaurant 365.
Okay.
So they take all of our data from orders, etc., plug it into their system, spit us out reports.
So the order of operation is you hire Sculpture Hospitality. They have their own counters that come in and do the inventory for you. And they're using AI and technology to scan, or are they just literally going shelf the sheet and doing it themselves, or is it a combination of technology?
Combination of technology. So they have their own scanning technology. So everything is marked. They scan it. It captures the weight. Yeah.
Got it.
Captures the weight of everything.
Got it. Where were you in terms of how much did this move the needle on cost of goods and tracking and really?
We already ran very efficiently. Like I said, we were
25%, 23%. So where were you at?
Yeah. So on beverage costs, we run around 21%.
21%.
Yeah.
Before Sculpture, where were you?
I would say we hovered in the 22, 23 on beverage.
So you picked up 2 points.
Yeah. Food, we were probably around 30. We picked up 2 to 3 points there.
So 4 points total. Yeah. But it sounds like the biggest impact was you're now not paying your employees to do it. You're You're paying people who are specialists doing it. I think there's something to be said about outsourcing this, because if there is any deception or, poor intention among staff, if there's theft going on, like, you can do something about it if you're doing the inventory.
Correct.
Right. But if you outsource it, then it's like you're removing like the bad egg from the equation.
Correct. That can definitely be helpful. I will also say, I look at it as a reallocation of time. Like I said, it's a time asset versus a time debt. I'm adding in, I'm letting my beverage director directly impact the numbers. I think it's just like, if you proofread a paper too many times, you miss errors because you've read it too many times. So if you're doing the inventory, you're going to miss little minor nuances that you input yourself. You might miss an error in a sheet. You might miss a miss key during that time because you're looking at it too much. Whereas now we have this system where it really does work hand in hand. It doesn't mean that there's no errors from an accounting team. It means that we're able to catch those errors much easier.
Got it.
Oh, hey, we noticed this anomaly. We show it should be this. So it doesn't mean you take your eyes off or you just say, hey, whatever you present to us is it. It has to work in tandem because there's still human error involved in everything. And so, but it just makes us look at the numbers in a different way, see them in a different way, be able to categorize them in a different way, and take away some of the fatigue that you're going to get from being in that 24/7. Because if you're doing inventory once a week, it's really 2 days worth of inventory. It's not, when a place is big, it's inventory and then it's the numbers of the inventory. And
right.
So now we're removing a piece of that.
So what is in terms of costs to outsource versus cost to pay your employees, how did those labor hours and outsourcing expenses compare?
It's roughly the same. I mean, and you're seeing the savings that you're getting as well. And so, I would say we definitely come out on top.
Got it. Yeah. And in terms of you said it helped you focus your attention in the right. You're getting all this new data. Like, what were the biggest lessons you learned from outsourcing this?
The biggest lessons here are trends. So, for us, it's way easier for us to figure out how to order, how much to scale, where we're also not setting on a bunch of products on our shelf. Before you might be like, well, I don't know how this is going to go, so I'm going to order 2 cases of Tito's vodka for this event. Whereas now we can look at the data and go, okay, historically, here's what we're averaging, here's what our swings look like, and we actually only need to order 18 bottles of this. So we're not setting our money on a shelf and waiting for it to deplete either. We're really tight on our numbers. We run it really close. So we get that luxury as well.
So you have a much better theoretical cost.
Correct.
So you can make much better purchasing decisions, so you don't have money sitting on shelves.
Exactly.
What about other technology? So you said again, 2022 to 2025, it was about feedback, data. What are the other tools you're using to get data? What are the other improvements you made in your operation?
Yeah. So, I think in all areas, we now have our Aloha systems connected to Resi, so we can see real-time data as far as what the customers are ordering, what they like, what is trending, for all of our customers. We use our Resi data a lot. Right. So we use surveys from them to figure out how we're being effective, how our service is, how our models are. And we also use that data to figure out, we've now created a system where we have what we call our Resi 100. It's our top 100 guests that dine with us the most. So now we've created a way for us to start our new menu series. So every time we roll out a new menu, we have a Resi 100 event in the spring. And we invite all of our top guests in for a free preview of our menu. It gives our staff time to prepare. It gives us the ability to have an actual service under our belt with a new menu for our chef team and our culinary team in general. And it also gives us really great experience to bring these guests back in and keep them coming and keep us fresh.
Helps them feel like they are being seen for their patronage.
Exactly.
And we all want to be seen. And when you feel like you're a part of the special elite group, and not to mention that they're probably, because they're coming back, they are your target market.
Yeah.
You want to create menus for them, so their feedback should be the most important feedback.
Exactly.
Right. So when you started using Resi, and you're looking, are you looking at spend or are you looking at repeat visits?
Mostly looking at repeat visits. Now that we have check connectability and all of that, it allows us to custom cater every individual experience for repeat guests. So we start to make notes of our own. We start to add things in. We start to try to give these surprise and delight moments, right? So, for instance, if we know that this guest came in, 5 times during a particular menu and they loved this red wine and it's no longer on our menu, we can look ahead and go, let's bring a bottle in of that. Let's make sure they have a bottle when they get here. So we're using our data to create guest experiences from that particular standpoint, but that's also increasing revenue. It's driving people's return visits. We're able to track that in a way that's just way more robust now.
Are you tracking it solely with Resi, or are you using, say, are you using Toast POS?
No, we use Aloha.
Aloha.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to track that information too with guest spend? Is there some kind of
Yeah.
Avero in the back end that's tying guest data?
Mm-hmm.
What are you using for guest data?
So that all ties through. Now everything's talking to each other. I mean, that's one of the biggest technological advancements. We upgraded our Aloha this year, which allowed us to have everything interconnectively talk. Same thing, like we're now using 7 Shifts, which also talks with Aloha. So we have real-time schedule versus actual labor. So now it's really about how do we connect all of the pieces that we have, because everything for a long time was so separate. You had your Resi data, you had your Aloha data, you had your schedule and labor data. Now they're all talking to each other. So it just makes for a more robust opportunity to look at everything as a whole.
Yeah. Do you have something in the background with or maybe Aloha is doing this now, like an integration with, like, say, Avero or something that's tracking the credit card processing data, like spend and all that stuff per guest?
Now Resi does it.
Resi does it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they all talk to each other. So like when when we're working through Aloha and you're going through your courses, as soon as those courses are done and you're taking check, that data automatically goes, like when they tab out, that data automatically goes into their user profile.
Okay.
And so we're able to look at that data and look at our spends in different ways. How do we do this? How do we do that? What are we seeing trend-wise? Especially with things like wine and drinks and stuff, you can really start to see those trends.
Yeah. Back to Resi in the Resi 100, was this something that was inspired by Resi? Did they say you should do this, or is this something you thought of?
No. Again, I'm going to give all credit due to Brian Bogart. He was like, we need to take care of these guests. And it all stemmed from me talking about doing a mock service. And we're like, why? Like, our staff will have already tried this food for a month straight. We don't necessarily need a mock service with them, and also you're not getting the same reps. So we're like, what can we create to do this? And Brian was like, let's get into our Resi data. Let's pick out our top. So we have a custom tag that is our Resi 100. And so you get that custom tag. We reached out to everybody. We gave them like a special like tote bag full of things.
Does Resi also do email marketing? When you're saying tag, are you segmenting like your...
No, you can create your own tags for guests, right? So you can mark them as VIPs. You can mark allergens. You can mark guest visit notes. Like, this guest prefers to sit in a booth versus a table. You have all those options to kind of create your own notes. So we work with our staff, our management team, etc., to try to make as robust the notes as possible. That way, it also prints out a chit. So like when we go to seat somebody, if it's their birthday or they're celebrating an anniversary, we can already have a custom experience pre-made for them with our server, so that they're already getting this different experience because of what they're celebrating that day.
Got it.
And so email marketing we still handle on our own. But
when you say on your own, you're not using...
We use like a standard like MailChimp, style marketing.
Got it. Okay, let's jump over to, I think you said Aloha 7 Shifts. In terms of 7 Shifts, how long have you been using that?
So we started building our 7 Shifts program out in like November, and we're just now rolling it out. We wanted to get it really, really right, and make sure that we had it super integrated before we got to the point of rolling it out. So it's very fresh for us.
Okay. What took you, and don't take this the wrong way, but what took you so long to leverage a labor management platform? Or were you using a different one that you updated?
We were using a different one.
What were you using?
We were using People Matter before.
Okay.
They got bought by Hot Schedules, and they kind of killed off their user side as far as like there's no more app or anything like that.
Got it.
So it's kind of a forced move. We really liked People Matter. It was a good
it.
data tracker, etc. 7 Shifts just I did a whole bunch of research and went through so many demos.
Yeah, it's like the most recommended labor management on the platform. What was it about 7 Shifts that really stood out to you that sold it?
I think the data and the functionality. Every scheduling software is kind of scheduling software, but the connectability, there's shockingly not a ton that are connected to Aloha, like the connectability there. So we could match schedules in real-time labor. Was great. Auto pull in people from our Aloha system, so we're not having to manually enter people in 2 different ways. All of that. Anytime I can find efficiencies, I want to find them. I mean, that's a huge part of what I do, is finding the most efficient way for us to do things. That saves on labor, saves on time, saves on bandwidth. So anytime I can find that, I do. And 7 Shifts just offered all of that.
Got it. Is there any other updates you made from 2022 to 2025 to really hone in, to really, like, what are the biggest impacts that these, I guess, any new or unmentioned technologies had on your business? Get them out now before we wrap up.
Yeah, no, I would say like those are the biggest technological things that we've been using. I'm going to shout out my management team. It's so strong. Like, I couldn't do it without them. Brian, all of us, we couldn't do it. We talk about it all the time. Like, our team is so bought in, so dedicated. They're awesome. Guinevere, Luis, Gabe, Charles, the kitchen team, Patrick, Connor, Prentice, Alberto. They are bought into what we do and how we do it. And they're getting our team to buy in. And that's the biggest thing, is like I always say, for lack of a better term, it's a pyramid. Like, I cannot get 112 people to buy in.
But what have they bought into?
They bought into the culture. They bought into the mission. They bought into the why.
Repeat the mission. Repeat the why one more time for us.
Yeah. So the mission is to impact our team so that we impact our guests. That's the broad general terms. We call it building a house. We've got a 5-ish super values that we rely on. It's community, it's interaction, it's positivity, it's creativity, and we bring that to our team because we want all of that back in return. And we feel like if we bring that to them, they're going to bring that to their guests, and that guest is going to have a better experience.
Yeah. Is there anything that hasn't come out of today's conversation? A question you wish I asked you? Maybe something more relative to the bar world, because I know that's a big passion of yours. A last piece of knowledge. I don't want to cut you short.
No, I think overall, I just want to say my biggest piece of advice, and I got this early on, is I used to think I had to move somewhere to build something, to be impactful, to do something, because Oklahoma City at the time wasn't where it is now. And I had a mentor that said, why move? Build it here. And just that knowledge of being like, oh, that's a possibility. I would love to tell everybody listening to this, like, you don't have to move somewhere to do it. You don't have to change your personal goals, your personality, anything to make something happen. You just have to be willing to put the work in and to put it into your community, and you will see dividends.
Yeah. And that's really the idea behind Restaurant Unstoppable, is like, you can take what you're learning from this podcast from leaders across the nation, the best markets, the most talented people in those markets, and you can take that wisdom, you can take that knowledge, and you can do what they're doing back home. And if we can lift people up, all ships rise with the tide, right? If we can lift people up across the nation and in these communities, and these restaurants can go into their communities and lift their staff up, and their staff can lift their communities up, like, that's a world changing, you know? Like, and that's the mission. And thank you for letting me sit here today and to share your story and to gather your knowledge. You're truly inspirational. You truly empowered our listeners today. And a couple questions before we say goodbye. What is one thing about your business, a value, a process, a system that's truly uncommon and makes you unstoppable?
I would say our dedication to continuing to improve makes us unstoppable. We're never going to take our foot off the gas. We're dedicated to being that business that 40 years from now, people are still talking about that is still impactful to their community.
The mission statement is to change the world through inspiring, empowering, and transforming the restaurant industry. So how have you personally transformed? How are you a better man today than the man you were when you got started in this industry?
Yeah, I owe it all to the people. I've been taught so much by so many people, from our staff to my partners to the leaders in our community. I've truly transformed via our patrons, our guests, the bands that come here. I take away something from everyone that comes here to make me a better leader, to make me a better man, to make me a better person in our society.
Yeah. This is the last question. If you got the news, you'd be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of you, your work, and your restaurants would be lost with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom that you could leave behind for the good of humanity, your legacy. What would those 3 pieces of wisdom be?
Never burn a bridge.
1.
Always take care of those who can't take care of themselves.
2.
And never stop being curious.
3. This has been so much fun, Scott. Man, thank you so much. I appreciate you making time for me. How can we connect with you? If we really enjoyed today's conversation, maybe we want to come check out your venue. Maybe we want to come work for you. Maybe we have follow-up questions.
Yeah. Reach out, scott@thejonesassembly.com. We're always wanting talent in our market. We search it out. I'm on social media, on mostly just Instagram and LinkedIn.
And this is episode 1100, and I lost track, 87.
Oh my gosh.
So we'll have some links to any tools or services and books. You mentioned a few books today. Start with Why, Leaders Eat Last, The Infinity Game, any other, books or, leadership books that
I've become, this is a little different, but I've become an avid reader, follower of Stoicism. So I'll shout out the Daily Stoic. It's just a game changer as far as letting things go, which I think is very important in our business. There's so many things that you could be upset about, but it's just a really great, just kind of daily reminder of being present, being in the moment, and just controlling what you can control.
I love it, man. Beautiful stuff. This is where I say thank you so much for taking the time to share your story, your knowledge, your mentorship, my man. Scott, there is no questioning. You are unstoppable. Cheers.